In the fall of 2021, despite a surplus of vaccines and therapeutics, the medical system underwent a shift in how it distributed life-saving resources. The Biden administration moved away from standard medical triage, treating patients based on the severity of their condition, in favor of a new distributive logic. The reverse equity model instructed health departments to reorder treatment lines, prioritizing demographic identity over medical risk. Under these guidelines, older white and high-earning Asian patients were explicitly deprioritized, regardless of age or medical history. Political scientist Yascha Mounk identifies the origins of this shift in his book, The Identity Trap. This triage algorithm applied a radical ideology to American institutions, replacing the foundational concept of class-blind universal rights. This ideology traces back to a post-war baseline, where European intellectuals viewed Marxism as the definitive framework for social change. Jean-Paul Sartre led an intellectual vanguard that maintained a fierce public loyalty to the Soviet Union. These thinkers remained committed to the cause, even as evidence of Stalin's mass purges and the Gulag system became impossible to ignore. The 1956 secret speech by Nikita Khrushchev shattered the collective illusion that Marxism was a predictable, scientific path to progress. Khrushchev detailed a staggering internal collapse. 70% of the 1934 Central Committee had been arrested and executed by their own government. A new generation of thinkers, including Michel Foucault, responded by abandoning all grand narratives. They came to view objective truth and universal values as mere instruments of power. Disillusioned by Soviet atrocities, these philosophers turned their attention toward dismantling the very concept of objective societal progress. Three distinct academic movements converged into the identity synthesis. First, postmodernism rejects universal truth outside power dynamics. Second, postcolonialism demands groups adopt rigid identity categories for political influence. Third, critical race theory abandons the goal of racial integration, viewing it as a tool for marginalization. This framework stood in direct opposition to the universalist ideals of Martin Luther King Jr., which prioritized shared humanity over racial division. During the 2010s, social media algorithms stripped these complex theories of their academic nuance, refining them into viral slogans and rigid moral imperatives. Graduates steeped in these ideologies entered the workforce, embedding these frameworks into the HR departments, newsrooms, and policy committees of major corporations and nonprofits. The election of Donald Trump in 2016 catalyzed this shift. Progressive institutions responded to the threat by treating internal dissent as political betrayal. This combination of campus fury, social media velocity, and the panic of 2016 allowed the identity synthesis to become the dominant framework for American institutional decision-making. The effects appear in programs like San Francisco's Basic Income Initiative, which limited its $1,200 monthly payments to residents who identify as transgender. This logic also reached the executive branch, with the Biden-Harris administration prioritizing emergency relief funds for businesses based on gender rather than objective financial loss. Even the ACLU, once a staunch defender of neutral civil liberties, has pivoted toward progressive separatism, prioritizing identity outcomes over universal legal principles. Modern activists now use institutional power to establish race-specific university dormitories, adopting a logic of separation that civil rights leaders once fought to dismantle. This shift redefines speech moderation as well. Tech platforms have moved away from neutral rules in favor of a hierarchy of protected identities. Moderation algorithms now distinguish between the speaker's demographic and their target. Attacks categorized as coming from oppressor classes are purged, while similar rhetoric from designated marginalized groups is often permitted. Elon Musk's acquisition of Twitter was an inversion of this double standard, an attempt to dismantle identity-based filters while opening the platform to right-wing populist rhetoric. Under the identity synthesis, rules serve to explicitly punish or protect based on demographic hierarchy rather than neutrality. This institutional focus on identity has increasingly alienated the traditional working-class base of the Democratic Party. Within these institutions, the pressure to conform is absolute. Dissenters face social death or professional termination for questioning whether these policies actually improve lives. This cultural gap helped drive the 2024 election results. Donald Trump gained ground among minority and marginalized voters who viewed the identity synthesis as an elite preoccupation rather than a solution to their needs. We see this tension in the career of Zoran Mamdani. Despite his diverse background, he faces establishment hostility because he prioritizes universal class issues over the zero-sum competition of identity groups. Woke institutionalism and right-wing populism function as mutually accelerating symbiotic forces. This feedback loop creates a dynamic where each side justifies the other's escalation. Institutional overreach fuels populist anger, which in turn is used to justify even stricter identity-based controls. Mounk's central warning is that we cannot defeat illiberalism on the right by adopting an illiberalism of the left. Breaking the identity trap requires a return to philosophical liberalism, a commitment to neutral rules, universal rights, and the belief that what we share as humans is more important than the categories that divide us.